Okay, it is 5 o'clock, so we will call to order the work session of the Whitefish Community Development Board for August 15th, 2024. Please note that in attendance are Whitney Beckham, Steve Quinnell, Scott Worster, and Toby Scott. And we're going to start today with Alan. He is going to give us a presentation on the community plan, the visioning update. So Alan, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, good evening. Okay, so I'm going to give you an update on what happened with the recent visioning sessions, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the actual vision. So, quick refresher, process by how the community forms a mental picture of what they want it to be. Happens very early in the process. In this particular case, what makes Whitefish special and how do we protect those assets? And generally it has a vision for the city, which I'll show you this evening, and then there's often more specific elements that go along with that. I thought that was a great picture. We actually had Whitefish High School seniors participating in the visioning sessions, which if you haven't already seen how excited we are about just having the high school involved, for me, I'm really excited about it. So we've had 6 visioning sessions since February. The first 2 were in this room, and they were very general visioning sessions. And those are kind of what we use to craft the statement, which I'll talk about later. But those were online polling questions, and it was kind of asking about values and what to protect and what they liked and didn't like about Whitefish, and how would you describe Whitefish to somebody. And if you remember the results of that session, I presented them to you here on March 21st, and there's a picture of one of the 2 work sessions. We had very good attendance, 113 people, I think was the number. Then from April to June, we had 4 more additional sessions, and those were in different geographic quadrants of the community. We did that for 2 reasons. First of all, we thought people were somewhat intimidated sometimes about just coming to City Hall, and we wanted to bring it out into the community where they actually were. Also because people are more familiar with their areas than everywhere else in town. So we thought the best way to really get good feedback is to bring these visioning sessions to where the people were. I think we had about 150 people was our count, which is, again, that's a good turnout. You know, is that a good representation of a town of 9,000? Probably not, but doing this for a long time, having 200 people showing up is pretty significant. We talked about, at these particular quadrant visioning sessions, we talked about strengths and opportunities about those geographic quadrants. I got a picture, got a picture in there you can see of the one that happened at Grouse Mountain Lodge, which was the most well-attended one, and I've got a map there just to kind of show you where these quadrants happened and what the dates were. Okay, so the first thing that happened is we had these individual questions where we asked people to just brainstorm and answer 2 questions. What is specific or unique, and what could be improved? You can see basically kind of the challenge that I had having to interpret these. 150 pages of responses. I had to scan all 150 pages. I learned very quickly after the first one not to staple them because I was immediately taking out staples every single 150 packet staples, so I didn't do that the second time. What I did, and I'll show you here in a minute, is I basically read through all these and just looked for general topics. What were they generally saying? And then I organized them into general topics. And then in those topics, I looked for specific things. I don't expect you to be able to see this, but put it into basically a spreadsheet. You're only seeing about half of the spreadsheet. You could scroll the spreadsheet down. But for instance, the topic was a bunch of different people talked about their historic neighborhoods. And some of the comments were houses are different, have different character, and we want you to keep the houses small, and we want you to retain the character. So there was different comments all related to historic neighborhoods, but I couldn't fit it all neatly into one title. But what I did do is I numbered them all. So I looked at like how many people commented on that same topic, and that's kind of how I figured out how to weight these. Does that make sense? There's like no easy way to do it. So I just organized into a spreadsheet. And I was able to come up with this. So I think what was unique about this is it really demonstrated to me that there are unique characteristics about the 4 different areas of Whitefish. I'm not going to run through all of them, but in the west quadrant, the trails, the golf course, and the Whitefish River and the Whitefish Lake, that's what was really when people said, these are what are unique about my quadrant, is what we got. In the downtown, no surprises, was the historic neighborhoods, and which I learned don't call that the avenues. I got scolded about that. We're going to call it the historic neighborhoods. The downtown, that it's walkable. So again, those are what the people in those quadrants said were important about their neighborhood. Can I move on, or do you want to look at all these? There's a lot. Want time to look or move on?
Yeah, but I just want to, well, this is kind of informal. You feel free to interrupt if you have questions at any time. Usually we would do a work session in the other room, but so that we can stream it, we have to be in here. But just don't, if you have a question, don't hesitate to just pipe in and ask, okay?
Exactly. We're streaming this, so we had to have it in this room. Otherwise, we would have had it in the conference room. Okay, so the south and the east quadrant, so they describe that as farmland, a rural feeling. They liked that there was close access to town, but they weren't in town. I can, again, run through all 10 of them. I think I've got 10 or 8 of them. And then finally, on the north quadrant, which will be on the other side of the viaduct, trails and walkability, Whitefish Lake. I found this one actually really interesting. Several people talked about the neighborhood housing diversity, that they liked that there was different types of housing all mixed in. There was apartments, there was duplexes, there were single-family residences, particularly in and around, like, Wisconsin, just north of Edgewood. I got that comment more than I would have expected. Areas of improvement I found was interesting. 3 of the 4 said trails and walkability. Now, I think it's important to mention that they're not saying the trails aren't good. I think they all, because I also saw everybody, one of the favorite things about Whitefish was the trails, but a lot of it was about trail connections, or we need a trail here, we need a trail down Wisconsin, we need a trail on 93. But those were the comments that I saw the most. West Quadrant wanted to have a bypass, so obviously so traffic isn't running along their houses, and they were the only ones that mentioned zoning. Some of the improvement needed to be with zoning, in particular, like what types of businesses and where they could be located. Again, I could let you read these or talk about them or just kind of run you through them. South and east, again, trails and walkability. The one that was different was on the north quadrant. Everybody said Wisconsin Avenue Corridor. So I don't even, the trails and walkability were kind of lower down. That didn't seem to be an issue. I think maybe because the only thing I can think of is maybe because there's already a pathway along Wisconsin. But a lot of people had a lot of different comments about Wisconsin. I couldn't go through all of them. There's just too many. So again, I just kind of generally categorized to show you what people were saying. But it did get more specific, and that's what I'm about to show you here. Good so far? Pause. Okay, this is called Poor Allen. On the right-hand side, I made you have maps with stickies. If you remember, we did this, and we had everybody write all these things on stickies, and then circle things on the map and write their comments. Took all those maps, and I scanned them, but before I scanned them, what I did, and I don't expect you to be able to see this, is on the left-hand side, I mapped every single sticky comment into the city GIS. And that's what you see here. You see basically screenshots. The one on the top, those were all comments about what needed to be improved, and I couldn't show you the whole city. There's just no way I could do this, so I just zoomed in. The one on the bottom, the purple is areas that I love, the yellow is areas that I don't like. And if you look at the sizes of the symbols, I weighted those on if I had more than one person saying the similar thing about the exact same area, then I weighted it to try to get an idea of like what were the things that everybody was saying. And then, you're always going to get random comments, but then there's things that kind of rose to the top too that people were saying over and over again. And with that, if you know anything about geographic information systems, I can export that out into a spreadsheet, and then I can do all kinds of different sorting with the spreadsheets and come up with ideas of what I could do. And here's what we came up with. So this is 250 comments from all the different groups in the visioning. And again, you can go online. If you want to look at every single one of them, I've posted those maps on the engagement site, and you can scroll through them and look at every single comment. But here's the top 5, right? interestingly, the comment that got the most "what do you likes" is the dog park and the Armory Park complex. Found that pretty surprising, and not City Beach. People love the dog park. Then kind of general, the pathways. There was a lot of the Riverside area, which is off of, what is it, 3rd or O'Brien, I think, at the end where you've got the bridge and all that. Smithfields and the historic neighborhoods. Those are kind of all like the big winners. And then Vorman was the loser on everything. Multiple people said that they didn't like walking on it. There was no corner. There was no sidewalks. It was scary to ride. The airport didn't have any fans. It could have possibly been just because of an ongoing case there that maybe people were sensitive to it, but I got quite a few comments on the airport. Comments people didn't like about 4093. Wastewater treatment plant stinky. I'm not sure what to do with that one. And then Edgewood, they didn't like that there's no sidewalks, no pathway. What was the most needing improvements I found interesting is completing the trail connection near River Trail Park, if you know where that is, and there's that bridge, and the trail started abruptly, and I actually got more comments on that particular thing than everything else, which I found interesting. I also got a lot of comments on the Baker Bridge, in particular removing the culverts, but also making it a little more bike-friendly and making connections to the river. Once again, Vorman came up, and once again, Edgewood and Armory came up. So those seem to be two things that kept coming up with issues. And then I think no surprises, areas of protection about rivers, corridor. I did like that historic character came up. There's been a lot of comments about protecting the build and what the soul of Whitefish is. So far, so good?
Yeah, I just want to comment that the theme I'm seeing in pretty much all of these top comments, is that there is a strong desire and attachment to the walkability and bikeability of our town.
That's exactly it. That was the thing I
Alternative
found
modes
surprising.
of transportation, like almost all. Well, the top 5 on this one is all. Those are all about.
I wouldn't have
They're all
guessed
about
that.
not driving. Yeah.
I wouldn't have, after I did all this visioning and I looked at what all the comments were, I wouldn't have guessed that the number one, and it makes sense, but I wouldn't have guessed that the number one thing that was going to come up would have been walkability. That's everybody's favorite thing. That's the thing everybody wants fixed. That's the thing everybody said they like about Whitefish, is that you can walk, and I won't say no need, but there's less need for a car here than a lot of other places. Good? Okay, now, I'm showing you this very quickly. I know there's a lot here. I'm showing you this just for the reason to describe to you the way that the community plan or the growth, I'm going to start calling the growth policy the community plan, but the way that it's going to be set up. And this is important because then I'm going to show you what we're doing tonight. So these are all very, very basic, but right now this is the way the basic sections of the plan are set up. So there'll be an executive summary that'll summarize everything. Introduction, which will talk about Whitefish and the setting and the climate and the history and all that stuff. Then there'll be the demographics, which a lot of that is in work, the ages, race, income level, all that stuff, population. Then there's going to be the vision, which we're going to talk about tonight. And from that vision, and this is what's important, is the vision is what the community said they saw Whitefish as and what is valuable to them. So vision Whitefish 2045 is, this is what the vision is, and this is what we want Whitefish to be now and in 20 years. And that is what the plan elements connected to. And I've got the plan elements in a different color, because what I'm trying to impress upon you is that the heart of the plan is the plan elements: land use, housing, economic development, transportation, environment, natural resources, hazards, and public facilities. Those are all, that's the meat of the plan, where we talk about those things in the city, and then we have goals and objectives that set work programs or policies or future regulations for those topics, and everything else kind of is supportive of that. So the heart of the plan is the plan elements. The reason why I want to make that clear to you is because the way the vision is set up, the vision is the framework of the plan and sets up those plan elements. Does that make sense? Everybody? Am I describing this well? Okay. So, this is by no no way comprehensive. This is kind of an example, but here's the questions we ask the people. How would you describe the whitefish? What makes it unique? What do you value about whitefish? What do you believe is missing? What are the biggest threats? What needs to be improved? Those are all the basic questions that we asked in the early visioning sessions and sort of some of the individual questions. And if I can back up real quick, all those mapping exercises, the ton of data, we're not using that so much for this vision statement. What we're going to use that for is as we move forward in plan elements, like transportation, we will be looking at all those comments and see, does the existing transportation plan, for instance, meet those comments? Is there stuff that's already being done? Is there stuff that's being missed? Is there stuff that we can or can't do? So we'll be looking at those individual comments as we move forward with the elements. But for tonight's discussion, I'm talking about the very basic value statements of how would you describe whitefish to somebody. And these yellow words, if you remember we did the word clouds that were all kind of fun. I originally tried to put that on the screen. It just didn't look great. So I'm just kind of showing you some of the buzzwords that I heard. So this is the way the vision statement is set up. And again, the vision statement is what is going to drive the plan elements, which are the heart of the plan. So we're going to have a basic statement, like a one paragraph statement saying, this is how we see whitefish. Then there is a vision theme, and each vision theme will correlate with a requirement of the Montana Land Use Planning Act. Basically, they require these elements.
Okay, that was the question I was going to ask. Those are the 6 elements that are required by the state?
There's actually 5. I pulled
Okay.
one out separately. They required public facilities to talk about transportation, but because transportation is such a hotbed issue, I decided to make that its own element.
Okay,
So we're actually, they require 5, and we're actually doing 6.
okay, but those are those 5 of those 6 are
These
the ones
correlate,
that are,
all of
okay.
these correlate exactly with what the state requirements are.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
So,
the statute under which we're doing all of this, one thing jumped out at me was that this plan not only governs what the current boundaries are, but also what we expect to be annexed within the next 20 years.
correct.
Does that, I don't recall that being a part of our visioning exercise where those red boundaries were. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't, I just don't remember.
They were the entire planning area. We used the entire planning area for the visioning, not just the city limits. The red boundary was the planning area. The
Wasn't
yellow
this-
boundary in the middle was the city limits.
Okay,
In fact, you might be able to, I don't know if you can see it. If you see that, I don't know if you can see it, but if you look at that red boundary line, like way off there to the east. So yes, we didn't look at only the city limits. We looked at the entire planning area because that's what we're required to do.
so when you say the entire planning area,
It's much bigger than just the city limits.
Well,
It's
technically, legally, no, technically, no, but, so we're talking about the old donut boundaries, essentially? Is that?
No, I don't want to get into the donut conversation, but yes,
'Cause we don't technically have any jurisdiction over
correct.
anything
We don't
outside
have
the
any
city limits.
jurisdictions.
Okay,
This is a looking 20 years in the future. If these areas within the planning and boundary were to annex, what should these look like?
I guess the question is, how did we determine that planning boundary?
correct.
The planning, we're going to get into that in later times, but we basically kept the same boundary that was used with the existing growth policy. There was so much discussion about that. I found pages and pages of quotation marks arguments about that boundary that we decided the only thing that has changed with that boundary is that we're bringing in Haskell Basin because we've got the conservation easements now and we want the water quality in Haskell Basin. But other than that, the planning boundary is the same as the future land use map and the existing growth policy, and that has not changed. We're still using the same thing. We're planning in that whole area. The area within the city limits we have jurisdiction over. The area out of the city limits, the state tells us we need to at least look at that and have zoning in place. So when they annex it, the people know what the zoning is when they're coming in. That's what the state requires.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Scott?
It does, thank you.
Okay. So this is kind of the breakdown of the visioning statement. What I gave in front of you, and I didn't put it up here because it's like a page of text. I did give it to you in the staff report, and I did post it on the website. There's basically two parts, okay? There's the vision statement, Vision 2045, which I'll show you in a minute. Then there's what I'm going to call the preamble. And that is what I put up on your desks, and it's kind of like, this is how the citizens saw the city of Whitefish. This is what was commonly mentioned. These are the things people like about Whitefish. These are the challenges that people described about Whitefish, and this is how the visioning happened. So it's one page describing that. And from that, this is how we developed that vision statement. So that preamble, when we have our visioning chapter, that preamble is going to lead into the vision. And I know it seems very simple, but it's important because the vision is the framework of the plan. Does that make sense? Okay. I'm going to come back to this, and this will also be on the last slide. So I'll describe this to you, and then I can talk I'll add a couple of more things and then come back to this. But this is what we are calling Vision Whitefish 2045. And you're seeing part of it, and I'll show you what I mean. The citizens of Whitefish value the working class origin of our city and embrace the future while honoring our past. We treasure the walkability, quality of life, scale, character, and small town feel of our community. To ensure Whitefish remains an exceptional place to live, work, and play, we will grow responsibly while protecting and enhancing our trails and open space, water quality, wildlife, natural resources, local businesses, historic downtown, and existing neighborhoods. And in the previous plan, it said existing single-family residential neighborhoods, but we're not using that because it's not all single-family residential. The following themes articulate our commitment and establish the framework of Vision Whitefish. So there's that basic vision, then there's these themes, and these themes all correlate with the elements that I told you about. So the first one, fostering responsible community development, that's land use. That would be the title of that element. Encouraging a diversity of housing, that would be the housing element. Being a multimodal community, that would be the transportation element. Supporting a robust economy, that would be the economic development element. Leading in environmental sustainability and resiliency from hazards, that would be the environment, natural resources, and hazards elements. And then ensuring high quality public services and infrastructure. So this right here, what you're looking at is what we're calling Vision Whitefish 2045. This is what the community says, this is what's important, and this is how in the future we're going to grow. Make sense so far? And I'll come back to this, so we'll have the same thing again. I'm sorry it's so long. I tried breaking it into the two parts, and it just doesn't work. You really need to look at the whole thing to understand how it works. So here's an example now. When I told you we have these themes, for instance, supporting a robust economy, each theme will have a theme statement. And that statement is, this is exactly how the community feels about that particular topic. And those are being crafted from what we're hearing in the visioning sessions and from the existing community plan, et cetera. I put this one up because at the last work session, the Community Development Board saw this one and it had me make a small tweak to this, but this is the vision theme. So what I'm saying is this will be the vision statement, and then these vision themes will have a theme statement underneath it, but we don't know what they are yet because we're still crafting it. This is the basic framework of the plan. Does that make sense? So the chapters of the plan will be responsible community development, encouraging and development, blah, blah, blah. So with that, we're recommending that you discuss, if you want the results of the visioning statement, discuss the vision statement, which I'll again put up on the screen and offer us any direction. And here again doesn't fit all the way on the screen, so sorry about that. Here again is the vision statement, and you have the preamble if you want that. I think that's it from my presentation. Does that make sense there? But I know it's kind of complicated, but.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Are we clear on what Alan is asking for tonight?
I'm asking for input on the vision statement, if you like it, if we're on the right track, because this is what the framework of the plan is. But if you have comments on the preamble, I'd like to hear that too, because that's going to be part of the vision session. But this is what we're really concerned about.
And let's keep in mind, this is kind of supposed to be an informal discussion, so we can talk through some things, and then we'll take some public comment in just a few minutes. So are we clear on what the basic part of this is the opening statement, the vision statement of the whole document, and then these are going to be the 6 chapters where the public comment has been incorporated and doing all those things. Okay? And these 6 correlate to the requirements from the state. Each one correlates to something that the state is requiring us to do under whatever law that is, right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
All right. So does anybody have any comments or questions that we want to start out with regarding the vision statement? Let's start with that part. And here's what I'm going to do. I am going to bring the microphone out to the audience, and there's a little on-off button on the bottom. And since this is informal, I figure it's easier to just pass the microphone around than to have to come up to the lectern and give us your comments. So I'll just bring this out. If you have something to say, just raise your hand, and we'll get you. We'll take your comment at any time.
Well, one comment I'd like to make is, excuse me, Alan, I think you're doing a great job weeding through all of the data and everything and coming up with this. And then also, the vision statement, Whitefish, the citizens of Whitefish value, blah, 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 like that. You've been able to very well incorporate the thoughts and feelings of the people of Whitefish. And especially well, maybe it's from your training, your background, but you're relatively a newcomer here, that to be able to verbalize this, you know, or text it out is very good. And I'd like to see what your vision statements are for the 6 areas there that you've outlined.
Well, you've seen one within the economic development.
Yeah, I saw one. Well,
I have the drafts written, but I don't think it's fair until we write the plan elements and engage the community to really come up with the final version. I really need to make sure they represent what the public says.
I understand. I think that it's good so far. There might be a little bit of maneuvering of text here and there, changing a word or a sentence or two, but I'll leave that up to the community consensus.
Okay. All right. Mallory?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Mallory Phillips, I live in Whitefish, and I think the vision statement looks really great. One feedback I do have around the word character, we have seen character utilized as a way to stop some of the things that kind of would allow for some of these things like walkability and quality of life. And so I just think potentially if there's a way to define what character means to us through some of the things that have come up in the visioning sessions, I think that would be important because I think character itself, specifically in housing, has a really nasty history to stop people of color and poorer people from living in places. And so I just think we need to be really intentional going forward. And I think, and maybe it'll be touched on further down, but I think that affordability aspect is missed in this visioning session. So I think that what I've seen in a lot of the feedback reading through stuff is that people want people to be able to work in Whitefish and also live in Whitefish. And so I think if there's a way to incorporate affordability in this visioning session or statement, that would be great.
Thanks, Mallory. It's underneath on the bottom. There's a little switch there.
Is that better?
There we go.
Richard Hilsner. Just as I look at this, the only thing that I noted was that I'm not sure how you define grow responsibly. What does that really mean? We will grow responsibly, and I'm not sure what that is and what that says.
Okay. I have several questions about things like that. My concern is that, well, like Mallory said, you know, including words like scale and character, those are kind of, I would rather keep it broad. In a vision statement, you want to be as broad as possible, and having, just keep it out there in case anybody else wants to talk. So, for example, the first sentence I like. The second sentence, we treasure the walkability, quality of life, and small town feel of our community, I think is enough. Taking out scale and character those kind of things are a little more specific rather than broad and vision-y, I guess. And then again, when, in the next sentence, I would say to ensure Whitefish remains an exceptional place to live, work, and play, we will, and I don't know if grow responsibly is the best word there, but that's something we can try to be more clear about. And then instead of saying while protecting and enhancing, I think we should just keep it all with the same verb tense there. Grow responsibly, comma, protect and enhance our trails and open spaces, comma. Well, I think it needs to be reworded in here a little bit. And there's two main themes. There's the open space and walkability part that we're trying to protect and enhance. And then there's also for lack of a better term, the character or quality of our town with our local businesses, our historic downtown, our existing neighborhoods. So there's kind of an outdoor part to that sentence, and then there's the kind of the more, I don't know what the proper word is for that, but we go from open spaces, water quality, wildlife, natural resources to local business, historic downtown, and existing neighborhoods. And those, they might need to be in separate sentences. And instead of saying while protecting and enhancing, I think we can just say we're going to protect, enhance all of these things. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay. Yeah, because that way people can, otherwise people can't hear you.
Yeah,
for
because
the
you're being
recording.
streamed on YouTube.
And people might watch the recording. Although G-Man's here, so he might not have
My
to
mom
rewatch
is watching it, so that's important.
Okay, this is for Alan's mom. And no, I think that your points are well taken, Steve. What I might suggest is that when Alan finishes with the work session tonight, that he provide you with a red line copy of the edits and suggestions so that those of us who are nerding out on this kind of thing, as well as yourselves, can see what actions were taken and what came out of it. So I think a red line draft would be helpful.
So you'd like to see where we started and where we ended up?
Yep.
Okay. That fair, Alan?
Easy.
Okay.
Can I ask a question of Alan?
Absolutely.
So Alan, as you were putting this together, one of the things that jumped out at me from the very first two visioning sessions, going room to room when we did, was there seemed to be a lot of support for the vision statement that we had in place. And I'm wondering if you, in developing this, did any kind of comparison back to that as a reference point, what things were included in there. And then the second point I have is, I don't see much mentioned in here about the type of economy. It says a robust economy, but there seems to be some diversity of opinion about whether we want to continue to have a parking lot on Wisconsin and 93, and what about the lack of parking in certain areas during season, things like that. But it seemed to me fundamental, maybe too specific, but I kind of wonder.
Do you want me to answer that directly, Chair?
Please.
In regard to the existing visioning statement, the existing visioning statement has a lot more than just this. It's about 2 pages. I went through that word for word and compared everything. So here's what I'm saying is, this is the basic statement, but as we start writing the theme statements, I will be going back and looking at what the original visioning statement is to make sure those are either captured or they're not captured for a reason. But what you were talking about with economic development, as we work through each element, supporting a robust economy, this is gonna be the statement about what so here's an example, right? This is our statement about what I heard when we met with all the business owners and 20, 30 business owners, and all we did with the economic development, this is what I heard. So the vision statement's gonna grow. And it's going to represent, it's going to either represent what's already done or, I hope, better. You're only seeing just the basic framework of it now, and we're going to be massaging these theme statements as we work on the plan elements.
Okay, great, thank you.
So if I understand what you just said correctly, this first statement should be a little bit broader. Then each section will have its own visioning statement that will probably incorporate things like traffic and planning or something.
It's a chicken
along
and the
those
egg thing,
lines.
because
Yeah.
in order for me to write the plan, I have to have a framework.
Right.
But I can't get too much detail until we've written the plan.
Yeah.
So this is setting the basic framework, and then this is why I designed it this way. And so this is just the basic framework, and then as we work through this stuff, there'll be a theme statement that's going to go more into specificity as long as it correlates to that basic statement.
Okay, sure, thank you. Any other questions or comments for Alan? Alan, do you want a vote on this, or is a head nod good enough? Do you think Alan is on the right track here with the 6 categories?
I guess that's probably the best question, because I don't want to vote because I'm going to do a red mark and bring it back to you.
Okay,
So I guess just the question is, you're fired or we like what you're doing?
Excuse me.
Toby?
Yeah, I think that it's very good, and whether the final vision statement is a encapsulated paragraph like what we've got up on the screen here, and then with the 6 items below it, which a theme for each one of those, or incorporate each of these following themes into the vision statement, so that as we're going to do the ensure Whitefish remains blah, 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 and then sort downtown, rather than the following themes articulate, then just incorporate fostering responsible community development with the vision statement for that. You know, in other words, make it into a long vision statement.
I see. I mean, you could actually take those 6 elements and put them into a sentence where I said, after to ensure Whitefish remains an exceptional place to live.
We
work,
could
and
do
play.
that. I wanted to make it simple
could say,
for the
"We will
purpose of
foster,
the framework of the plan, but we
encourage."
could certainly
Yeah,
do that.
You
Go
got
ahead,
it, Jim.
Josh.
I understood Al's memo
Your
to say
microphone.
that we'd have this general.
Your mic, please. Mic. Thanks, Toby.
Guess it's on.
Yep.
I understood Al's memo to say that we would have this general vision statement, but then the themes for each element would become part of the vision statement, so that the whole vision statement would include the general statement at the beginning and then the themes.
That is correct. You're looking at the short version right now. This is the short version to design the plan. As we design the plan, the theme statements will become part of this vision statement.
And the other thing is that even if we voted now, this is a long, long process, and we could change our minds later about it, right?
And we might, but if I don't have,
Yeah.
I need to know the general direction of what I'm writing with the plan as I'm moving forward.
Well,
Yeah.
I for one like the general statement
Okay.
with the changes of sentence structure, whatever. But
Okay.
the meat of it is, I think, good.
I agree. I haven't said that yet, but I liked Steve's comments and suggestions and would also like to see a red line edit. And I appreciate that you've given us more wording than we might need, because it's easier to work from more and whittle it down. So I would say continue to give us a lot of words, and if it's a lengthy sentence, it's so much easier to just chop that away and keep what we feel is important and the community says is important, but we need on paper what the community said. So I appreciate this and think you're on the right track.
Okay. Scott, anything else?
I guess I'd just echo what you all said.
Okay. So yes, you're on the right track. We wouldn't be voting to say this is any sort of approval of what it's going to look like in its final form, but just, yes, this is, at this stage in the game, I think we can all comfortably say that this is the direction we want you to head. and start building out those other chapters.
I have a question. This is just on the visioning statement. Are we going to discuss the economic objectives and goals and theme later?
So we did bring the economic development goals and objectives in June. You will be seeing a whole chapter, a completed chapter of that again. Every chapter that we work on is going to come in front of you again before you see the whole plan for discussion. Every single section.
We still have a year left at least on.
18 months.
Yeah, but I mean, ideally, we'll be starting to see some finality, some
there
final
is-
pieces. a
There
year
is
from
more,
now.
the economic development, there is more to that section. There's actually, we've got the goals and objectives and this little summary and this like snapshot, but then there's actually all this background information that you haven't seen yet, and that will comprise the whole section. The way this is gonna look is, at least this is the way it seems to be going, is that each plan element will have a snapshot. If you remember that snapshot we have, it'll have a snapshot, it'll have the goals and the objectives right up front, and then it'll have the background of however much information is needed for that section, and those goals and objectives come out of that background. But we put them up on top because that's what people is looking for. So you've only seen 2/3 of it right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I wasn't sure whether we were going to talk about economic development today. And last meeting, I hadn't received the consultant study, and so I wasn't really up to speed. So I'll just file, I'll send you a copy of my comments, and then maybe at the next time we talk about economic development, I'll discuss those.
Sure, if you send me comments, I'll incorporate them, and in fact, I'll send them to the consultant so they can look at them.
Yeah, I think I need to write them down because in a month I'll forget what I said.
Me too.
Okay, any other comments from the public? Any other public comment today? Okay, are you?
So,
Yeah,
sorry.
Go ahead, Alan.
Okay, so with that, then what I will do is, for the September work session, which it sounds like we're now having, I will bring back the red marked version of this, and I will also include the economic development theme statement. The rest of them we don't have yet. I have them, but they need to be vetted out with the public. But I'll have the economic development theme statement with this red marked version for you to look at.
Okay.
Do you want to, and that's, I'll talk to Dave about whether we want to do anything else that night or not.
Okay. I would assume that we're going to start probably having we'll probably start having a work session before every planning.
I would put that on your
community
calendar,
development board, yeah.
because now that the visioning is done, we already have a lot of drafts, very early drafts written. I have to talk to the planning director about how we're going to move forward, but we have a lot that could start coming in front of you.
Yeah, so, I mean, generally what we'll start to be seeing, we'll start getting parts of each chapter.
What I hope to do, again, I don't have Dave here, so I don't want to speak out of turn, and hopefully I have a job next week. The hope, what I would like to do is send the actual sections of the plan, get them to you earlier than a week in advance, like maybe 2 weeks in advance, and post, or more, and post them on the engagement site and send out a notification so I have time for public comment and I can incorporate public comment and you have time to look at them and then discuss them. So I don't think that the Thursday before is enough time when we're starting to talk about plan sections.
Okay, and I would also like it to not have to do more than one section per work session. I mean, I'm seeing probably maybe 2 work sessions per section.
Sure.
Potentially.
Sure.
Depending on what's there.
There'll be a few. I think environment, natural resources, and hazards is going to be more than one. Economic development could be just one because it's one of the shorter sections. I think environment, natural resources, and hazards is going to be more than one work session or a long work session because that's already 20 pages.
Yeah.
I think land use and housing is going to be like a year.
Yeah.
Or 9 months.
Well, okay. All right. So everybody's clear on that. We can kind of expect to have work sessions at 5 with dinner, of course, right? Once a month. the city will provide dinner for us, and just kind of plan on that for the next year.
I think it's good.
Or so. So, yeah, I think, again, you've done an amazing job, Alan, incorporating all this stuff and organizing it and putting it into some sort of visualization that people can kind of see what comments were made and where and what bubbled up to the surface more often than others. I don't think that anybody who has attended any of these could say anything negative about the process so far. So thank you for all your hard work.
I appreciate that, but I'll wait and see.
Okay, all right. And with that, we will close the work session. We have about 14 minutes until our general session, so, okay. Thanks, everybody, for attending. Appreciate it. All right, it is 6 o'clock, so we will call to order the regular meeting of the Whitefish Community Development Board for Thursday, August 15th, 2024. For the record, please note that John Middleton is not in attendance and everyone else is here. And we will start with agenda changes. Anybody want to change any order on the agenda tonight? Wendy, anything that needs to be moved around? Okay. Then we'll move on to approval of the July 18th minutes.
I'd move to approve the minutes as written.
I'll second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any further discussions or changes? Okay, those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. Phil, did you get to vote on the, didn't see your hand on either? Okay, so that does pass unanimously, thank you. I just want to make sure we cross our Ts and dot our Is, Phil. And then the next thing on the agenda is communications from the public for items not on the agenda. Does anybody have anything that is not on the agenda tonight? Sure, yeah, please. Thank you, yeah. Thanks, Mallory. Anybody else that has anything for items that are not on the agenda tonight? It sounds like a great opportunity, Mallory. Thanks. Okay, we'll move on to our unfinished business. There is none, so we'll move on then to our public hearings. Our first item on our first public hearing is WZV 24-05, a request by Marilyn Sykes to request a variance to fence height requirements for an 8-foot fence. And this one, I guess you're the only one here tonight, so you're
Yep,
doing them
yep.
all. Okay,
Yeah,
Wendy.
so this was one of Nelson's, this one and the next one are one of Nelson's. He wrote the report, so I'm just presenting it to you for him. Again, variances, you guys are the decision makers. This is not a recommendation to city council, so put your decision-making hats on and we'll proceed. So the property owner is requesting a variance to the fence height regulations to build an 8-foot tall fence along their southern and eastern boundary. This is for the Whitefish RV Park located at, where's the address at? Well, it's on Highway 93. I guess it's not in his report, 6404 Highway 93 South. The city code limits fences currently to 6.5 feet, and the applicant reports a need for privacy for the RV residents from the taller buildings and new construction that's taking place around them. You may recall a couple of years ago, you folks in the city council approved a subdivision of the canopy, and they were obligated to put in some roads and, remove some trees to get those roads in, and these roads are right up next to this, these folks' RV park. So many folks that live in this RV park are also full-time residents, so it isn't just sort of the seasonal nature of folks, but there's actually people that live there as well. So they're proposing a 318 linear foot fencing along the eastern boundary, as well as 578 along the southern property line. The property, again, is at 6404 Highway 93 South. It is zone WB2, which is our secondary business district. The property is a little more than 4 acres. We did place a legal in the paper and notify adjacent landowners, and no public comments were received. Variances are reviewed according to the criteria in the zoning regulations. The first criteria being limiting reasonable use of the property. They do have reasonable use of the property whether or not they have a fence. The RV park was constructed in the 90s. Fences aren't necessarily a use of the property, but it would enhance the privacy of that particular use. Deprive the applicant of rights enjoyed by other properties. The RV park is an existing residential use that was once surrounded by undeveloped property, but then now development has occurred to the south with a new right-of-way and then potentially a future right-of-way, which would be the extension of Baker Avenue. So the RV park does have the potential to be impacted by future commercial and high-density residential development. This RV park is unique because there are no other RV parks in that area. There is one further to the south, but that is outside city limits. The hardship is the result of lot size, shape, or topography. It's not really the result of lot size, shape, or topography, but due to the location, which the RV park cannot control development outside its property lines, which is contributing to the loss of privacy. The hardship is peculiar to the applicant's property because it is a residential use surrounded by commercial uses. The hardship was not created by the applicant, and so the development to the south is reducing the privacy for these folks. The applicant is not claiming an economic hardship. And then it will not adversely affect neighboring properties. Again, it's a right-of-way to the south, and another additional 18 inches of fencing shouldn't cause any problems, but would just grant additional privacy to the folks using the RV park. At some point in the future, Baker Avenue will extend to the north. It is going through the canopy, and there's a potential there could be some clear vision triangle issues that we'll have to work through, but that could be, 20 years down the road, so there's no need to worry about it at this time, but just to bring that up to you. The variance is the minimum needed to alleviate the hardship. This is what they indicate, that 8 feet is the minimum that is needed for them to alleviate their hardship for the lack of privacy. We do allow 8-foot tall fences in commercial areas, but only around storage areas. So I think that's where they came up with the 8 feet. So it's no taller than something that we might have allowed in other areas. Granting a variance will not confer a special privilege denied other similar properties. Again, there really aren't any similar properties to this out there on the highway. And only commercial and industrial storage yards can have an 8-foot tall fence. But we don't have any other residential uses that have that size of a fence, so it is a little unique in that respect. But complying with the fence requirements does not allow for reasonable privacy for the residents and guests of the Whitefish RV Park and their neighbors, and so staff is recommending approval, subject to 3 conditions of approval.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy? Go ahead, Scott.
I've got one. So at the beginning of the report, on page 2 of 7, the view looking towards the eastern property line. Went out there for a site visit with Nelson, noticed that there's a kind of a small sort of pig wire fence that runs through those trees there. Trying to figure out where the fence was going to go. The trees that existing now are pretty effective privacy barrier between the park and whatever's behind it there. Did you have any indication, are they going to take down those trees to put the 8-foot fence in?
You know, the applicant is here, so that would be a good question for them.
Perfect. Thank
I
you.
don't know.
Anybody else have questions for Wendy? I have a couple, Wendy. So is this a commercial use of this lot or a residential use? I don't
mean,
really,
it's kind of both, right? Because folks
Yeah.
do live there year round, but then I think you can show up and, you know, stay for a shorter period of time, because it is an RV park.
okay, so some people do live there year round, but an RV park use on a city lot would be considered a commercial use though, rather than a residential use, wouldn't it?
Well, I mean, I think it's called out separate than residential. I don't think it's called out necessarily as one or the other.
Well, I guess my bigger question is there like a conditional use permit on this? Because it's, what is it zoned?
It's WB2,
Okay, so it's zoned commercial.
right, but multifamily, as you know, is a permitted use there.
Right, but it still has a commercial zoning. So, I mean, I'm just trying to make it a little bit easier in my mind for some things. Okay, that's fine.
It's
I don't-
a conditional use in that zoning district.
Okay, all right. An RV park is,
Yeah, it's the under RV park, campground, and amusement park
okay, so in the WB2, that's a,
in the WB2.
yeah, that's a conditional use.
Correct.
Okay, so do they have a conditional use permit for that?
I don't know.
Or maybe it's just been there so long? I guess I can ask the applicant
Potentially,
that. And then the other question I have is, you know, when we evaluate variances, the language clearly states that no variance shall be granted unless the board finds all the following conditions are met or found to be not pertinent
Correct.
to the particular case. Do we need to make a finding of something that is not pertinent? So for example, the hardship is not economic. The applicant is not claiming an economic hardship. Do we need to make a finding that, that because this is not an economic hardship, that it's not pertinent?
Yeah, I mean, you could do that.
Okay, just to clarify.
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
I don't know that we necessarily have in the past. I'm just trying
Yeah.
to be a little more precise in when we either approve or deny something.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, all right. Those are the 2 questions I have. Any other questions for Wendy? Okay, we will open the public hearing then and hear from the applicant first. Would you like to come up and, it sounds like Scott has a question for you. I might have a question for you as well. Yeah, you have to come up. I'm sorry. And if you would please just state your name and address for the record. Oh,
Yeah.
hang on. I don't think the mic is on.
Oh.
Did you turn it on?
Tap the front of that microphone.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't come through on the recording if it's not. I can hear you, and everybody in here can hear you, but it doesn't get recorded the right way. It's working now.
Okay, I'm Marilyn Sykes. I own the property at 6404 Highway 93 South in Kalispell. And I need the variance. The city has built a street along the side, and safety alone, we need that street, we need that fence. And to protect both sides, and evidently they're going to put some commercial across that street. And, you know, just for both sides. I mean, I don't think the people that are gonna live there are gonna wanna look at an RV park every day. And, you know, we don't wanna, oh, shoot, I'm sorry. We don't, you know, need to have the noise or from the street. I mean, these people are coming for a, you know, a quiet getaway, and they don't need the street noise right up at their head. And if you walk over there and look at it, the street really came in close. We had beautiful trees before, but now we have a street. So, you know, and we have lost trees. We've lost our own trees. They kind of killed some of them as they were building the street. So I'd like to say that the east side, we wouldn't have to do that, but it looks, from what they say, we will anyway. They'll cut through there.
Okay. Thanks, Marilyn.
Okay.
Scott, does that answer your question?
I think so. So you probably will lose some of those trees, in other words, put the fence in there. Like, do you have any idea? Not that makes a difference.
Of losing the trees?
Yeah.
Yeah, we lost several trees, and some of it even the city took out because of a water line that they needed to hook onto. That took some of it. But yeah, we lost a lot of trees, and some of them were just injured or to where they're going to die anyway. They had an arborist out there that looked through and decided that. So yeah, we lost quite a bit in that.
I think the question is, Scott, do you want to rephrase that?
On the east there, along where that row of trees is pretty much a kind of a solid wall. You really can't see what's beyond it.
Right. We like that.
Right. So you're going to try and keep that?
We would love to keep it, but I don't know, you know, if they put, Baker goes through there, you know.
Oh,
If it does, then we'll
I thought that
lose-
was on the west side. I mean,
Probably is on the
The
east
Baker
side.
extension would be on the east side of that.
East, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
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 Okay.
okay,
A little
if that ever
turnaround.
happens.
okay. That
Oh,
it?
this is Baker here. It's
Yeah.
gonna go.
Okay.
I have a question for you, Marilyn.
Okay.
Is 8 feet tall enough?
Well, I don't want it to look like a prison or, you know, just a walled up place. And so I think 8 will be fine.
Okay,
I mean, and we'll plant some more trees. You know,
Okay.
that'll cut some more of it out. So,
okay,
okay?
all right. Okay, a couple more questions for you,
Oh, okay.
or at least one.
Looking at a map view of this, Baker Avenue, should it ever go through, will be going through to the west of your property. And it looks like probably taking out a lot of trees. If that does go through in the next 10, 15, 20 years or whatever, would you then be seeking a variance for an 8-foot
Well, this is
fence along
for
the
both
west side?
sides. This is for both sides. I asked for the variance for both sides. I
Oh,
think.
okay, yeah, I see.
Yeah.
All right. Fine. I misunderstood. I was,
Oh, that's,
the east and the west were right and left hand wrong.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, all right, Whitney?
How long has the campground been there?
You know, I really don't know when it was built, but there's people that are there that have been there, coming there for 30 years.
Okay.
From Washington, from Florida, a lot come from Florida, every year.
So
And they want the
probably
same
prior-
space.
Probably prior to conditional use permit, I would guess.
Oh, yeah,
Or the
Yeah.
implementation of zoning.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. Well,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep.
okay.
Used to be a place out in the country that is no longer in the country. Okay. Thanks, Marilyn. Anybody else wish to speak on this matter? Okay, we will close the public hearing then and throw it to the board for a motion.
I'll make a motion. I move to approve the fence height variance up to 8 feet in height located at 6440 Highway 93 South in accordance with the Whitefish Code of Ordinances, Title 11, Chapter 7, Subsection 7, based on the findings of fact presented in the staff report and subject to 3 conditions of approval.
I'll second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Yes, Wendy.
I'm noticing that.
Okay, all right, let's go through this again here. So, conclusion, where are the conditions here? Okay, I've got it here. Fence height may be up to 8 feet tall on the southern and eastern property line. That's not correct?
Are you, I'm
no.
confused.
It's on the eastern side, right? It's on the side that borders where the Baker extension
Towards
would be.
Don K.
And then the southern side, yeah. It should be the eastern and southern. The west side, west of you is still treed, correct? It's still forested there.
And no road.
And there's
yeah.
no road back there. Clear? Do we, well, let's back up. Let's make sure we have this because. Where's the drawing? What page
I
is
don't,
the drawing?
it depends on, I don't see a north, south, east, west on the drawing. Is it?
Wait a minute. Which,
Sorry. Yeah, here's the drawing, and it's on the south and the west side.
the one in
south
the
and
packet
west.
has a blue line on the eastern side.
Well, there's a property boundary
Oh,
on
no,
the
that's
east.
that's not oriented north-south.
It's not oriented north-south, yeah.
Okay, let's,
So east would be the top of that?
East would be the right, well, of that
The top.
picture.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
east would
looking
be
at
the
staff
top.
report, page 5.
You're right. East would be the top.
So it
need
is,
to
that was, so that wasn't my understanding of where it was going to go.
Yeah, that's not my understanding either. Marilyn, do you want to come back up for a second?
Here, I'll bring the drawing up here, too.
Yeah. This is pretty confusing now. The map is not oriented north-south, it's oriented east-west. Yeah.
No, it's on the side, it's on the
I thought it was the east and the west. Okay. Okay, so you're not putting a fence along the side across from the chalet and the locals lodge?
Okay, those were the trees that I was talking about.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
talking about the
okay,
wrong
so
street.
you're, okay. And you don't want a fence there?
Well, not yet.
Not yet, okay.
That makes sense to me now.
Yeah, the drawing is oriented, and the,
I
And-
apologize for the confusion.
well, in
I should have been able to answer
The
better.
staff report is incorrect as well. So I don't, so we need to change the staff report. The finding. Yeah. So the does it matter to anyone where the fence, which sides of the property the fence is on? No, I mean, to any of us, so that,
No, it makes more sense to me, having viewed it, right? The tree line that I was talking about, like, was right in the middle of the fence, and it seemed to defeat the purpose of the fence to take down a much more visually effective barrier to replace it with an 8-foot
Yes.
fence. So that makes much better sense to me.
okay. And you're clear on where the fence is going?
Oh, I know.
The western side and the southern side, okay. Well, we need to, yeah, have a friendly amendment to amend the staff report. We've got this now, thank you. We'll fix it for you, sorry.
And that condition of approval.
And the condition of approval number 3. So can I get a motion on the, just in general, changing eastern to western, and then changing condition of approval number 3?
I'll make a motion for a friendly amendment to change the wording in the staff report where it references eastern property line for fencing, to change that to western property line for fencing. And then finding number 3, can this all be one friendly amendment? Or should we make it 2 separate?
Let's make it 2 separate, just
Okay.
to keep it cleaner.
So that concludes the first friendly amendment.
Can we get a second on the first friendly amendment?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on that one? Okay, those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously.
And I move to make a friendly amendment for finding number 3, or I guess condition number 3, where it states southern and eastern property line, for it to state southern and western property line.
Moved, can I get a second, please?
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion on that? Okay, those in favor, raise your hand. Like, those opposed? Okay, that does pass unanimously. Wendy, what would be the best way to accommodate what I was talking about earlier? So, variance has to meet all of those, all 9 of the, or all 8 of the, forget what they're called. Yeah, all 8 of those criteria, but number 5,
We could add this criterion does not apply.
okay, so we would need to make an amendment to that, or
Sure.
to the
You want to?
motion? Okay. I'll make a friendly amendment that, that finding number 6, or criteria number 5 does not apply in this case.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any further discussion on that? Did everybody understand what I'm?
I just want impacted her economically during the past year.
Okay,
So just so everyone knows that we did read that, if she's not claiming that and the staff report says that's not a reason for this to be met, I understand that, but applicant did in the application state people left early and she had to turn away business.
okay. I'll withdraw my motion. Is that okay, Scott?
Draw the second.
Then should we amend finding number 6? That says that the applicant is claiming that is, or should we just leave it? We're not denying this thing, so, okay, let's just let it go. Okay, so let's get back to the original motion with the 2 friendly amendments. Wendy, are you clear on everything? Okay. Those in favor, any further discussion on this? Okay, I think we made enough mess of this. Those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and does pass unanimously. you're all good to go for your fence on whichever corners, the south and western corners of your property. Uh, And thank you for sticking it out tonight, and apologize for the confusion. Okay, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, which is, where'd my agenda go? WZV 24-04, request by Dan Hansen from Frontier Builders for variance to the side and rear setback requirements for a proposed deck expansion. Again, Wendy.
Okay, so just today, I received an updated plan that I put in front of you folks, where they're gonna remove the covering to the proposed deck. So those updated plans are there. I also updated the staff report to remove the term covered throughout. So that's what you're seeing. And then there were some comments that were received, I think after Nelson put the packet together. Again, this is one of Nelson's projects that I'm reviewing for you folks. So those are up there in front of you as well. So the property owner is requesting a variance to the side and rear setback requirements in order to reconstruct an existing legal non-conforming deck. 3 square feet of this deck, the existing deck, are in the Lakeshore Protection Zone setback, which will be removed under another separate permit. The deck repair and expansion would take place completely out of the LPZ setback, that Lakeshore Protection setback. And recall, there's a 20-foot setback from the lake, and then another 10-foot setback that's in the zoning regulations. The proposed deck will extend 3 feet 2 inches into the required 10-foot side yard setback on the north, and 4 foot 3 inches in the 10-foot side yard setback on the south, and the entire 20-foot setback in the rear setback area. This will result in a depth that's exactly the same width as the house, but they're adding an additional about 92 square feet of deck with this proposal. So there would be approximately 336 square feet in the rear yard setback. After review of neighbor comments, this updated site plan is before you, that continues to include a deck, but has removed the roof portion or the covering. The property is located at 1474 Barclay Lane. The property is on WR2, which has a 6,000 square foot minimum lot size and a lot width of 50 feet. And the lot coverage is 40%. The lot coverage standard can be met, and the lot is a little bit bigger than the minimum lot size, but the lot width is considerably smaller. It runs from 40 feet, around 40 feet to a little bit less than 40 feet. So it's not exactly a rectangle. The property, according to the state records, was built in 1987 and is located in the side and rear setbacks, including an existing garage. Staff placed a legal in the paper, notified property owners, and at the time of writing the report, we didn't have any comments, but we do have some additional comments that are included again up there for you folks. Neighbors were concerned about the roof blocking their view. There were some questions as to whether or not there really was a hardship requiring a larger deck, and then concerns for precedent for future requests in this particular neighborhood. Similar to the other one, we review it according to the criteria in the zoning regulations. Again, this property owner does have a home, so they do have reasonable use of their property, but the regulations limit the ability to provide any upgrades or repairs to existing structures, since everything is located within setbacks. The existing home was built in 1987. It does not comply with the Lakeshore Protection Zoning setback, the rear yard setback, or the side setbacks. So repair or additions to a deck without a variance is limited. Again, the existing deck is encumbered by both side and rear yard setbacks, and there's no room for any sort of expansions without receiving a variance. The next review criteria is deprive the applicant of rights enjoyed by other properties similarly situated. There are other similar properties in the neighborhood that would require a variance if they needed to do some sort of deck repair, due to there's some pretty narrow lots down there in that particular neighborhood. The hardship is a result of lot size, shape, or topography, because again, it's a pretty narrow lot and substandard in regards to width. The home and deck, again, encroach into the rear and side yard setbacks, and the deck is in the rear yard setback. Again, the minimum lot width in this district is 50 feet, but the lot is closer to 40 feet in width. And then the existing rear yard does not go into the lake or further into the lake like a lot of the lakefront lots do. It's a little bit outside the lake. Hardship is peculiar to the applicant's property. The hardship isn't peculiar to their property, but to really the entire neighborhood, is a lot of the lots in that neighborhood are substandard and have structures built into setbacks. And we have reviewed a few variances in this particular neighborhood. This particular parts of this home and deck are constructed in the rear and side yard setbacks, and about 3 square feet, which is going to be removed, is in the Lakeshore Protection Zone setback. Again, the lot is non-conforming with lot widths from 38.88 feet to 42.08 feet. And then city code does prohibit decks in the side yard setback. The hardship was not created by the applicant. The home was constructed prior to the current ownership. Again, the applicant is not claiming an economic hardship. And then granting the variance will not adversely affect neighboring properties or the public. Neighboring properties would not be adversely affected by granting the variance. The deck will be the exact same width as the existing home. It's not going to encroach any further or closer to neighbors. And then it's going to be pulled further back from the lake, and then there's nothing on the Barkley Lane side where the traveling public maneuvers. The variance is the minimum needed to alleviate the hardship, because it is just meeting the same width as the house currently is. They're not making it wider than the existing home. They are expanding it a little bit more into the rear yard setback at about 90-some square feet, which is about half the size of a parking space for reference. Granting the variance will not confer a special privilege denied other similar properties. The variance request to build the deck into the LPZ setback is not a special privilege denied to other properties. Other properties would have to meet the zoning regulations or apply for a variance and due to a hardship. And then it goes on to talk about granting a variance to this property would not grant a special privilege as other homes exist in this area that also are legal nonconforming and located within side and rear setbacks. So we are recommending approval, subject to the 3 conditions of approval, including the amendment and condition number 2, striking covered to that deck. Can I answer any questions for you?
Okay, questions for Wendy? Yes, Whitney, go ahead.
So Wendy, on the diagram that we have on page 5 of 7, where it shows a new proposed roof line, is that something that we're no longer looking at since covered is off the table?
So that was in the original packet? Right, yeah.
Okay.
So the updated plans have removed that roof, and it's just showing a deck now.
Okay. So this large print we have here is now showing us
That's,
what it
yeah,
would look
the
like.
one that I received today.
And the roof line stays the same, it's just a footprint deck?
It's just the deck, right.
Okay,
So they're going from a 271 square foot deck to, oh, I wrote it down somewhere. I can't remember. A little bit larger deck.
okay, thank you.
Other questions for Wendy? Go ahead,
I
Toby.
just want to understand this correctly. So the current deck in the one photo appears to be about extending 3 feet from the lakeside front of the house?
3 feet? No, it's extending, they're taking out 3 square feet from the lakeshore protection
No,
zone.
I'm talking about the current deck that's there, according to the picture on page 4, is looking at the lakeside front of the house, and there's French doors, and then there appears to be a deck of sorts about 3 feet deep, 4 feet maybe?
I think it's bigger than that, just based on the drawing, the survey that we received. Maybe the applicant could describe the dimensions to you. They're showing the deck is 271 square feet, and then what they're proposing is gonna be 368 square feet, so they're adding about 93 square feet.
All right.
I wouldn't, the perspective on the picture might be off compared to the drawing.
Okay.
And I think actually you're looking at, it looks like the deck is stepped down and then this is also part
Yeah,
of the deck
that's what it
here.
looks like to me too, that there's more deck below
So
the
that's
stairs.
part of the deck as well. Okay. In a minute, Dan, we'll get you. Okay. Any other questions for Wendy, Scott?
Well, we definitely have done variances in this neighborhood for other homes. Exactly what they were, I couldn't recall off the top of my head. But I mean, the lots, some of those lots are pretty narrow down there. So it's likely that there are structures then within setbacks. I think that's what he's referencing.
I have a few questions for you. You said, I think I heard you say, the city code allows decks in the side yard setback?
Does not allow
Does
decks. in
not
this.
allow.
Yeah, you can encroach up
Okay.
to 1/3 in the front and the rear, but you can't encroach at all in the sides.
Okay, so that's why we have a variance request.
Yeah, and then they're
Okay.
doing all of the rear yard setback, not just a third.
Right, so from the back of the house, they're encroaching in the entire, okay.
Yeah.
Without a variance, if they wanted to improve this deck, what would they have to do? What could they do?
I mean, you can do regular repair and maintenance, painting, repairing a board here and there, but you can't take out a deck out of a setback and then put it back in a setback. Once you take it out, like if it's really falling apart, then you wouldn't be able to repair, you wouldn't be able to put it back.
Okay, and if I'm looking at the existing drawing correctly, I don't know what direction it is, but it's to the left of the back of the house on the map. That appears to already encroach in the side yard setback, but the right side does not. Is that, am I reading that
Yeah,
correctly?
I think that's true. And then wholly in the backyard, yeah.
And then 3 square feet of that extends into the Lakeshore Protection Zone.
Right, and they'll be removing that part.
They would be removing that, but they would be kind of paralleling
Right,
the back of the house and just coming right up to
just
the,
no wider than the existing house.
okay. But without a variance, they could only repair what's there and not rebuild it the
Right.
same way that it is now. Is
Right.
that correct?
Right.
Okay. And then, we see this quite often in these variances. Something was built in the 80s before zoning. Would these issues be part of what you would expect to know from when you buy a place from somebody, like a title insurance company or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because
I mean, it is what it is. You
because
can
when we-
continue to use it as it is, but
Right.
once you want to improve it.
Well, exactly, that's my
Right.
point, because we have a criteria that says that, that somehow it limits the reasonable use of the property, for one, and then we have another one, the the hardship is a result of lot size, shape, topography, or other circumstances over which the applicant has no control.
Right.
And I have a hard time buying that, when you buy something, you gotta know what you're buying. And it's hard for me to say, yeah, this is not something, anyway, that's kind of my thought process. I'm just wondering if that would be something that would be disclosed when you are buying a place.
Yeah, I'm not really sure.
Okay, all right. Okay, I think that's all I have. And the other question that I have is they are actually expanding the size of the deck by 200-something square feet.
No, they're expanding it by like 90 square feet.
Okay, 90 square feet.
And then I guess
Okay.
just for reference, a parking spot is 9 by 20, so it'd be like half the size of a parking spot. They're expanding it,
Okay.
just for reference, something we all know about.
Okay, thank you. Anybody? Yeah.
I think I see where the deck that they want it to be. And it appears to be from the photo on page 4, it's called Figure 3, location of the proposed, at that time covered deck. So they'd be taking out the fireplace and sitting area that's directly in front of the house in order to put this deck in?
I think you might have to
I
ask the
think
applicant
that's what it
that
looks
one.
like, but again, the applicant's here, you could ask them the
Yeah,
questions.
okay.
But that's what
And
it
the
looks like.
second thing is just a point of fact. That house was built in 2001. I know for a fact because I watched it being built.
I don't know.
And
I
so
guess
they
that's
were
the-
aware of all setbacks and setback requirements when the house was built.
So they must have got a variance in 2001 to build the
You'd
whole
have
house?
to check back then.
I don't know. That came from the state of Montana Department of Revenue data.
Yeah, well, I can tell you from having watched it be built. It was
Was
built
there
in 2001.
something there originally then?
What?
They tore it down to the dirt?
Yes, I remember the whole circumstance. It's a long story.
Okay.
But, yeah, it was built in 2001. I mean, I can verify that because I was using the same contractor, and when he finished that, he moved over to my cabin at the time of 750 square feet and started building mine in September of 2002.
Okay.
And I watched that house being built. So they were fully aware of all the setbacks when it was being built, because that was actually the second house built by the landowner, because he built the house next door at 1472, the year before that. And so I was just wondering about this deck. The property, being a neighbor, already takes up from the house down to the beach, and it doesn't mention the fact that
Toby,
they have
just
a lot of...
quickly, do you have a question for Wendy, or
No.
you can, I want to hear those comments, but let's save them for our deliberations,
Okay.
please, okay?
I have one more question for
Go
Wendy.
ahead, Scott, yeah.
Thank you. So Wendy, based on the comments about square footage, would you say that this is an expansion of a prior non-conforming use?
Well, they're gonna tear it out, and if they get a variance, then it would be a new deck. I don't know if it's an expansion of a non-conforming, because the variance is gonna give them new setbacks.
So you wouldn't consider this to be an expansion of a prior non-conforming use under your interpretation of the code, or you would?
Well, I mean, the use is residential, so they're not, that use is
Well, it's larger,
the structure.
right? I mean, would you have considered, if they had come in for a covered deck, would you have considered that to have been an expansion of a prior non-conforming use? Going up?
I mean, if you get a variance, you're getting a new setback, so it's not really non-conforming anymore. It'd be conforming to the variance, so it's not a non-conforming, I guess.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying.
I don't think I understand your question. What is it you're trying to?
So, it's my understanding of zoning law in general, right, is that the idea with non-conforming use is that they're not to be expanded,
Right.
right?
Except out into conformance with the regulations or get a variance, which is why
Right.
they're here.
So the variance process, so my question is what we're considering here, whether or not to expand a prior non-conforming use.
Well,
in
and
granting this variance.
I kind of wonder from Toby's information if maybe they'd already received a variance.
I'm sorry, what?
Maybe they'd already received a variance that we're not aware of from 2001.
Well, this would be even an expansion over that.
So it'd be not a non-conforming use, it'd be conforming to whatever variance they were granted. I mean, non-conforming means it was built before the regulations were
I understand that,
enacted.
right.
So it's, if they received a variance, then
We don't know that.
we don't know.
Okay,
I don't know.
thank you.
That's something we should know. Whether, I mean, because obviously it encroaches, the house encroaches into the side yard.
Yeah, and if it was
And
built in the last 20 years.
And the left-hand side of the deck encroaches into the side yard as well. So
But then if
either they
it's
built it out of
illegally,
conformance, yeah,
Right, it was either
which would have
permitted or it
been,
wasn't.
so then it wouldn't be non-conforming, it'd be, yeah, and. I mean, I guess at this point,
Okay.
it doesn't really matter. What you're
Right.
being asked to do
Yeah, we're
is,
just
can they
evaluating the
expand their
deck,
deck by
yeah.
90 square feet?
right, yeah. Okay, that's really all we're being asked here.
I understand, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Wendy? Okay, we'll hear from the applicant first. We'll open the public hearing, hear from the applicant first. So Dan, come on up. If you have, we probably have a couple questions for you, or if you have a presentation for us, however you want to do it.
My name is Dan Hansen. I represent Casa Gratis, and that's 1474 Barclay Lane. Excuse me. So yes, our client is looking for a variance to make his deck a little more usable, and he really wanted to use it in the wintertime as well, safely, and that's where he wanted to have the covered deck and the deck expansion. After reviewing, the comments from his neighbors, of course, he wants to be a good neighbor, and he realized that, yes, that if that's a problem with his neighbors, then he does not want that. He still can have, a sunsetter awning that will give him some shade in the summertime. It won't do anything for safety in the wintertime. He'll just have to clean his deck off. Your question, well, I don't really need to answer your question until you ask me, but with the original deck coming off the stairway, it's larger than we're proposing now. We just want basically a nice stairway coming down to a usable deck. The area we're expanding into is a hardscape with a fire pit, and he doesn't use it. It's unsafe. It's some stepping stones with a stone fireplace or fire pit, and he never uses it. He can't use it. It's unusable space. It is a hardscape though that you could use. But he just wants to make this a little more safer in the wintertime and a little more usable in the summertime, because he is an all season. He's out of state, but he is here quite a bit, all season, or all seasons of the year.
Okay, any questions for Dan?
Not for me.
Dan, my question would be, knowing that, that it's non-conforming as it is in the setback, what would be the objection to just building it to the side yard setback? And have the same encroachment into the rear yard setback, but just make it, the expansion to the sides, I think, is the part that's giving people heartburn. I think the part that goes out towards the lake is not as crucial, because, like you said, it is a hardscape already, and it's already there. Why would it be something where it could just bring it into the side yard?
Well, I guess if you're looking at the house from the lake, the left-hand side is already in the setbacks.
Yeah.
Which, I believe they had a variance for anyway, so that was conforming, like Wendy had also.
Okay.
It is conforming, and they did get a variance, obviously for coming into the backyard variance. It's the other right-hand side, as we're looking at it, to have that variance to be more usable. I guess, That's what he's looking for.
Okay,
And
fair enough. Any other questions? Yeah, Toby?
I have a question as to why he needs this deck. One reason, because I'm aware that there's probably a 10, 20-foot wide by 20-foot long deck that is not pictured in these pictures, that is in the Lakeshore Protection Zone, extending out cantilevered over the lake. And what's wrong with him using that as a deck? They use it all the time. I mean, you can't dispute it. I see it from my house. And I'm wondering, why does he need another deck? You planning on having larger parties?
I don't know if he has parties.
Well,
I don't think that's something that Dan can actually answer.
Yeah,
He's
but,
just,
Yeah,
he's
and
here on
also
behalf of his client.
the bit about the setbacks, I agree with Steve, is that why can't you do it within the setbacks? I know my house is 2 doors up, and when I was remodeling it from a 700 square foot cabin, which all of these places were cabins, boy, the city didn't give me anything. I had to adhere to the 10-foot. It happens that I had sidewalls that were grandfathered in, but wherever that sidewall ended, I had to move it in, and I didn't get an inch. Maybe that's why I'm a little bit adamant about seeing whether you're going to get an inch or not.
Possibly, yeah. It's unfortunate that you didn't receive that, but if you did apply for those variances or what, I'm not sure of your circumstances, but.
Okay. All right, any other questions for Dan? Okay, thanks, Dan. Stick around, we might have some at the end. We will now open the public hearing to anyone else who would like to speak. If you want to speak, come on up, state your name and address for the record, and we're happy to hear what you have to say. Don't be shy.
In the early 40s,
State your name and address
I'm
for the record,
Diana
please.
Stevens. I live at 1470 Barclay Lane.
Okay.
In the early 40s, my folks created a cabin camp. It was called Camp Alamac. There were 7 cabins on the lake, which this building that we're talking about is part of. And my dad's intention was to have kind of green space in front between the cabins and the lake, so everybody along the way had a view, enjoyed the lighting, the trees, the lake, the views, and nobody was supposed to obstruct that. And of course, people are asking to do that, on and on. And I just wanted to say that it has been a nice green area where people can enjoy, and if they're going to put a deck out there, are they going to put a railing on it? Then are they going to put an 8-foot railing or a 4-foot railing or what, which will obstruct the view down the lane? I don't know. That's just my opinions.
Okay, thank you, Diana.
Can I ask her a question?
Sure. Typically, we don't do that, but that's fine.
Diana, would the proposal that you've heard tonight, would that obstruct your view?
Not unless it has a high railing on the deck. Yeah.
Thanks, Diana. Anyone else with?
Hi, my name is Carrie Arnott. I'm at 1470 Barclay Lane. The woman over here was referring to 90 feet as the expansion, but it's actually 90 plus 336 feet in the rear. It's 92 on the side and 336 in the rear. And I also wanted to say that our opposition to this wasn't just about the covered deck. It was about the deck itself and the possibility of railings obstructing the view down the lakefront. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. me? Yes.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Gary Stevens, 1470 Barclay Lane. I don't know if you're aware of what's on the deed restrictions of all these properties, and the deed restriction says, no structure or building or any portion thereof shall at any time be erected or placed within or in front of the Whitefish Lake frontage boundaries as established in the survey. That is on every deed of these properties. And that was meant to create an open space, viewing area for people that live along a common frontage so they all have views and can enjoy the lake, its environment itself. We had a fight with the house right next to us that tried to build his house down in there, and we won that battle legally, that this deed restriction is indeed in effect. So we have a concern with the encroachment into the backyard, where city code allows encroachment up to 1/3 of the required rear yard setback. All the properties to the south of this property, not including Toby's house, but 3 properties to the south, all conform to this requirement of the setback in the Lakeshore Protection Zone, that they do not encroach up to 1/3 into that zone. We all have green areas of yards and stuff in our front, and we have no structures or fences that will obscure the view of anybody on either side of us, and that is part of our thing that we wanted to do and keep at the properties. Your report here says, and I'm a little confused, in the background it says the home was constructed in 1987 and is located within the side and rear setback. Well, apparently that's not true, yet here it is in your report stating that as fact. And I guess I don't understand that. The other thing that bothers me a little bit going on here is has the fire department had anything to say about access and being able to get down the sides of these buildings when we get into the setbacks? Is there any restriction on them that they'd be concerned about as far as having to fight a fire that occurs between these buildings? Because the more you restrict that setback, the more restrictive it is for them to access these properties for that purpose. Anyway, thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, thank you, Gary. Any other public comment tonight on this? Dan, you want to come up and address any of those concerns that came up?
Absolutely. Yeah, this is usable space as it is. I mean, this is not going to obstruct any views whatsoever now that he's taking our request for a covered deck off of here. This is an existing deck with an existing, basically, usable hardscape that you're going to be walking through anyway. So the only people that it would obstruct would be themselves or maybe a ground squirrel. I'm just not concerned that it would obstruct anybody's views whatsoever. Like, that's not a concern. I hope you guys can see in the plans where the deck is existing already. And all we're proposing is that, and actually we're going to fix this deck because it does conform to our setbacks, variances that was already given, but it goes into the Lakeshore Protection Zone. And we're going to fix that, move that back, that 3 square feet, because we don't want to encroach on that. Obviously, that's very important to everyone, all neighbors, and we want to make sure that that, you know, is rectified. All we want to do is move the deck, make the stairs smaller. The stairs are basically 12 feet wide by 3 feet, unusable space. I mean, he can store stuff up there. He just wants to make the lower deck more usable, and that's all he wants to do. And then the hardscape that we want to add the deck is basically it's a 1.5 foot foot off the ground, there's no need for railing. A code says anything over 2 feet, you need a railing. The 1 foot that we have, we won't need a railing at all. There won't ever be a railing there.
But there will be a railing on the part that extends, well, so the steps are gonna come down from the French doors and then everything else, and then they'll kind of come into the middle of this 1 foot deck that's
Correct.
up against the side of the house, the back of the
Yes.
house.
Yes, that's
So
exactly
the
right.
part that's gonna extend to the right over here is not gonna be raised 3 feet, it's gonna be down at ground level?
Yes, it's just barely above ground level.
Okay. So the whole thing where looks like boards is all at the same level, all,
Right, it's just one flat surface with that, our small deck expansion. That's
okay.
all that is. And then just making those stairs smaller, because right now it's, like I said, it's 12 feet wide by 3 feet. It just, he doesn't need that space. He'd rather have the lower space.
Okay. And get rid of the hardscape, the rocks and the fireplace and all that stuff?
Yep, because it can be dangerous. It's kind of deteriorating over the years. I don't know how old it is, but I think it's quite old. And the rocks are kind of falling off the fireplace, and they just never use it, and it's not comfortable. It's not a comfortable area for them to use, and that's what they're looking for.
And if you took that out from where it's existing now, that would probably pull out the 3 feet that's encroaching into the lakeshore protection zone, because that looks like that's the corner that is kind of encroaching.
That's exactly right. We're going to pull that back.
Okay. Thanks, Dan. Yep, go ahead.
I don't know if you have access to this picture, this figure 1, it looks like, but it shows the marker. It's on page 2 of 7.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see the red lounge chairs that are on the deck that's there now. Is the deck with the hot tub and the railing, is that the next property over?
Nope, the hot tub is not in the deck area. It's past the deck area.
Not the deck that we're dealing with now. That's
No.
another deck area for
That's an
the same
existing
property?
grandfathered in deck that Mr. Scott had mentioned.
Okay, so is that anywhere on these drawings? That
No,
deck that's existing, it's nowhere?
No, that
Okay.
we're not dealing with that deck whatsoever.
So, but that deck that I can see with the hot tub, that's completely,
Lakeshore protection zone.
yeah, in the lakeshore protection zone, and the side setback, the rear set, it looks like it's, and I know it's not what we're dealing with, but I'm just trying to figure out how much of this property, because it seems like we don't know when this was actually constructed, what variances have already been granted, what may be grandfathered in, what has been constructed since some other variances. So we're deciding a variance on a deck that will encroach further into side yard setbacks that this property already has decks in those setback and lake protection zones?
I think if I'm understanding your question, if you're just referring to the grandfathered in deck towards the lake, yes, there is one there, yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dan.
I'm just, thank you for
Appreciate your
answering that.
time.
Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out
Oh, no
what
Trying to
we're
figure out what we're
expanding
looking at here.
into. Yeah,
Sure.
this side picture. Thank you.
Okay.
Dan, I'm just wondering, how tall will the new railing be on the deck? Will it have any impeding of vision by neighbors?
If you were required to put a railing on, it would be 36 inches tall, but we're not required because of our proximity of the ground. We're only
Okay.
a foot off the ground, so we're not required to have any railing whatsoever.
Okay. Any other questions for Dan? I think that's it, Dan.
Yeah, and we do want to make sure that we are keeping our neighbors happy, and you know, our client
Okay.
does as well.
Make sure it's a question, please, Toby. Okay.
Looking at this figure 1 vicinity map, which is a long, thin map looking from the, I guess, the south side or east side of the property over, and we can see the hot tub, and in front of the hot tub, there's a deck. And that's the height and the deck that you want to expand towards the viewer in this picture. Is that correct?
You are looking at,
A tall, thin, no, not that one.
Do you have that picture? Yeah.
Yeah. That's looking at it from the, I would call it the south side of the property, or it's looking towards the hot tub.
yes, you can see the upper, the kind of the raised up area there to the
Yes.
right. That's where we'd like to expand that, or where
So
the client would.
that's the deck height that you're talking about.
Correct, yeah.
Yes, and the little red blurb that we see there is probably that cushion chase lounge or whatever that's in.
It's a
figure
rock,
3.
yeah, just a rock seat.
Yeah.
And then,
Okay.
See the red cushion, yeah. You can see the red cushion, yeah. for
Yeah,
that chair.
it's this thing.
Yeah.
I think, or something, or.
oh, I see, over to the far right, yeah, that's just a chair and
Okay.
Yeah.
on the existing deck, yes.
All right. Okay. I think you're done, Dan. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, if you'd like to come back up, I'll give the public one more chance to rebut, and then we're going to close the public hearing.
One thing that we haven't mentioned yet was the precedence that this will set forth for other properties along the way. And just reading from this report, city code permits decks to encroach upon up to 1/3 into the required rear setback. This deck is subject to the variance request approximately 89% within the rear and side setbacks. And so we're just concerned about what this, the cascading effect, as Scott mentioned, other requests in our neighborhood, we just don't want, we don't want to lose the green space. We don't want to, I mean, even if it is a hardscape and it's low and it doesn't have a rail, you're still removing green space and lighting. It changes the lighting, and we're not happy about that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. Okay. Anybody else wish to speak on this matter? All right, we'll close the public hearing, and let's go to the board for a motion. Don't everybody speak at once. Okay.
I'll move that the request for variance be denied.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's moved by Scott and seconded by Toby. Would you like to speak to your motion? We will have to change some of these findings or determine which criteria you feel that this proposal does not meet.
I haven't heard anything that tells me that this is the, excuse me, the minimum that will alleviate the hardship, which is finding number 8. I realize that a lot of the comments that were directed to this proposal had to do with the fact that it was covered. Personally, it seems to me to be an expansion of the use, and by increasing the overall size of the deck in an area that's affected by a number of variables. I guess I would consider as an alternative tabling it and sending it back to staff for further investigation. But the deed restriction that has been mentioned, the question about whether other variants, other decks in the area have been built pursuant to variance or not, and particularly the one complaint about the discrepancy as noted in Robin Toner's letter dealing, it's page 2 of 5, number 2, explain how the regulation deprives the applicant of rights enjoyed by other properties similarly situated in the district. It seems to me that that criteria is also not satisfied, because as I understand it, none of the other property owners feel like that this is a right that they enjoy without a variance. And there does seem to be some question about, they say that no other property similarly situated has received a variance. No other property has a structure of this type, and it would be an anomaly. That seems to conflict with proposed finding number 2 of the staff report. Because it says other decks in the district are located in the side and rear setback. It's my understanding that those would also have had to have been granted by a variance.
Okay, let's be a little more scientific about this. And so finding 2, how would you reword that? Can you just add a word or two? Or
I'm a little bit uncomfortable with trying to do this on the fly.
Yeah, I get you. I understand that.
So,
But you don't agree with finding number 2?
yeah,
Okay.
and I'm trying to explain the basis for my motion. Finding 2
Okay.
and finding, I'm sorry, let me get back to it again.
I think if we just add the word "not" to finding 2, strict compliance with these terms, with the terms of these regulations does not have the potential to deprive the applicants of the right enjoyed by other
That would
residential.
work for me.
Okay. Got that, Wendy?
And then delete any language that would justify the contrary conclusion.
Yep.
I would also think that this is not the minimum. I think that, as in finding number 8, so I would add is not the minimum. That would
Okay.
alleviate the hardship, that this deck could be built smaller. Correct, within the setback.
Okay.
Those are the basis for the motion.
Okay. Could I add a friendly amendment?
Have I got, I don't even know if I, oh, you did second, didn't you?
It's been seconded.
Certainly,
yeah.
go ahead.
I also find that, that 1.1, limit the reasonable use of this property does not fall within, I don't think that this criteria has been met. And I would just reword this, that strict compliance with the terms of these regulations does not limit the reasonable use of the property. That would be finding 1, and you could strike everything after that. As well, if that's my friendly amendment.
I accept the friendly amendment.
Okay, so you'll second it?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's take the friendly amendment first. Does anybody wish to discuss that? Go ahead.
The motion generally.
Let's take the friendly amendment first and see if that gets it added on. If it doesn't, then we don't have to.
His motion didn't,
Okay,
so what are we amending?
that's a good question. Maybe we don't need that. We're not amending, we're still denying it, so, yeah.
So could we deny it and then work on findings? We don't know if we're denying it yet.
Go ahead, Toby, yes.
We've had an issue with denial in the past, and when it goes to city council, if we haven't established a reason why it's been denied by either changing, altering the findings of fact, or creating addendums to it, they'll just say, looks good to us, and they'll pass it.
But
So we need
recognizing
to-
that this won't go to council, right?
Yes, this won't go to council, but it could be appealed to court, in the court.
Okay.
So we want to be clear that about our findings.
Yes.
I'm not sure what the process is for that, whether it's done by amendment or if it's just done as we deny it, we give you the findings that support denial.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how you guys have done it in the past. You've made a
Okay.
motion to deny, you've seconded it, and then you've worked on the findings and said, yep, these are our findings, and then you vote on it.
Okay, all right, so we don't need a friendly amendment. Thank you, John.
So can we go through finding 1? Does anyone have something?
let's do that.
1, 2, all the way through the list?
Yep.
Okay.
So I addressed finding 1 already. Does anybody want to add anything to that?
Other than reading it back, say strict compliance with the terms of these regulations does not limit the reasonable use of the property. Strike the remaining balance of that.
Strike the
entire
remaining,
paragraph.
yes.
Okay?
Finding 2, strict compliance with the terms of these regulations does not have the potential to deprive the applicant of a right enjoyed by other residential lots in the same district.
Period.
And strike the rest.
Yeah. And then
Finding 3,
I wouldn't change that.
okay, we'll leave finding 3. Finding 4,
Use the first sentence. Hardship is not peculiar to the applicant's
period.
but to the neighborhood, as many of the homes are substandard. Well,
Can we just put a period after property?
could be.
Okay. Okay, got that, Wendy? Strike everything after that. Finding 5. We don't even know whether that's accurate. Okay, okay. We can leave it. Finding 6, the applicant is not claiming economic hardship, which kind of supports denial anyway. Finding 7, granting the variance will not adversely affect the neighboring properties. I don't think we need to change that one.
I think we do need to change that one. And from what I see and hear and see in the diagrams that were presented, granting the variance may adversely affect neighboring properties because the home and deck are located within the side and rear setback currently. I mean, because of the fact that it's already in this side and rear setback, it may
Okay. So
affect. I don't
strike
think we
will
can-
not and put may.
Yes.
Yeah, I was concerned about rear.
Put a period after currently.
That's what I would do.
Okay. Got that, Wendy? Okay, finding 8. I would suggest the variance requested is not the minimum that would alleviate the hardship imposed by the setbacks, period. Got that one, Wendy?
Isn't our premise that there is no hardship?
Okay,
So then we can't say it would or would not because there is no hardship, so.
well,
The
he's
variance
claiming a
requested.
hardship that he's deprived the right of use to his property. But I think.
That was a question that occurred to me. What exactly is the hardship that's being claimed? And I'm not certain that I understand what that is.
So
The alleged hardship,
well, okay, I don't think we need to get that deep into it.
I mean,
That would alleviate the claimed hardship.
Okay, all
claimed,
right.
yeah.
Can you add that word in? Okay. And then finding 9, granting the variance would not confer special privilege denied other it would confer a special privilege denied other similar properties, period. So take out, scratch not, okay?
All right?
All right. So, anything else we need to change? I think that's it. The conditions do not apply because we are moving for denial. Any further discussion?
None.
Okay, I just would like to say a couple things. On the surface of it, this does not appear to be a big deal. And in fact, it probably, would be an improvement in pulling 3 square feet out of the lakeshore protection zone, and putting a 1-foot deck out to the edge of the house doesn't seem like a big deal, but it actually kind of is when you're already in a non-conforming situation. And I don't think that, I understand that the applicant would like to have a nicer deck, Looks like he pretty much has a nice deck already with a hot tub on it. And he would like the deck next to his house to be nicer, but that is not grounds for us to grant a variance, because once we start granting variances for things like this, it could have a cascading effect, although we do take each variance separately. But it's clear to me that the conditions and the criteria are not met in this case. So that's my reason for denial here. Anybody else? Yeah, go ahead, John.
What's been said by Scott and Steve. And I'll add something about these regulations. We have to follow them. They may not be drawn in the best way for every case, but we have to follow them. And so we can't see that this is a peculiar situation, for example. Maybe that's not what we should be looking at, but that's what the regulations require that we look at. And the variance request has to meet all of the requirements. So on that basis, I don't see that it would be fair to grant it because of the cascading effect.
Okay, Whitney?
I just want to raise a point of clarification. Toby, you're not in any way benefiting, or you're no longer close to this property? You have nothing? Okay. You just had several personal anecdotes and knew a lot about it, so I want to be clear in case this is appealed or goes any further, that you in no way have any interest in this.
I don't benefit
Okay.
from anything from whether it passes or fails.
Thank you.
Okay, Phil?
I have no further comments. I agree with the consent so far.
Okay, let's vote then. Those in favor of the motion to deny, raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. The motion does pass unanimously. Thanks for coming, Dan. Appreciate your time. Okay, and that moves us to our last public hearing tonight, WCUP 24-08, a request by Kevin Kaltschmidt on behalf of Eagle Enterprises for a conditional use permit to expand the storage area for automotive sales. This one is actually yours, Wendy.
Hang on, let me get my files. Okay. So this is an item that will be going to city council. So you will be making a recommendation here, and then it'll be going to city council on September 3rd. So the applicant is requesting a conditional use permit to expand a vehicle inventory storage area for automotive sales, which will increase their pavement by a little bit more than an acre. The project will include landscaping and stormwater management. The property is partially developed with a single-family home and some outbuildings. Currently, the property is comprised of a corner lot where the detail shop is on the corner of JP and Highway 93 South. And then there's a lot that has a little bit of highway frontage and then kind of wraps around the backside of the detail shop and then goes up the hill where the single-family home is located. As part of this request, they've applied for a boundary line adjustment. So the corner lot on JP Road will actually extend all the way up the highway frontage. And then this particular lot will be behind entirely where the kind of those parking areas are out in front of the highway and then go up the hill. So that is in process. So it doesn't reflect on our maps right now, but on page 2 of my staff report, you can see how they're amending the lot lines there. So a conditional use permit is required in the WB2 zoning district for automotive boat recreational sales, vehicles, repairs, and service. So this is an expansion of the Donkey business. And the vehicle storage area will be wholly located within the WB2 zoning district. The whole entire lot is like 11.5 acres, but only about 1.2 acres of it will be used for this particular use. The property is located at 6208 Highway 93 South. Again, the property has a single-family home on it and some outbuildings that are being used for the automotive business. The property is surrounded by church, residential, and commercial uses. And the property is split zone. It has WR2 with a special conditions. That was done when kind of some properties in this neighborhood were rezoned. And then a WB2 zoning district near the eastern portion of the property. And you can see on the zoning map how it's kind of split out a little bit. And that would be on page 4 of the staff report. The growth policy designates this area because, again, it's split zone, has split growth policy designation of general, commercial, and urban. The property is served by all public services and facilities. We noticed adjacent landowners posted a sign on the property, did a legal notice, and we didn't receive any public comments. We review conditional use permits according to the criteria in the zoning regulations. The property with the area where the storage lot is going to be located is in the general commercial area, so it does comply with the growth policy. It's intended to have auto-oriented type of uses. Under compliance with the regulations, the property is split between two different zoning designations. We've got this funny little section in our zoning that talks about how if property has split zoning, you can develop with one or the other, but not both, and you have to leave one open. But currently, as it's set up, it's a legal non-conforming use because that parking area for the automotive was pre-existing before it got annexed into the city. And even with the lot line adjustment, it's going to continue with this non-conforming status. So the planning director was comfortable with this. It's not increasing the degree of non-conformity, it's staying the same. There's adequate land use area for the property. There's access, existing access onto JP Road. There's no environmental constraints. Under parking, location, and layout, it isn't like a traditional, conventional parking lot. It's more of a storage area. And so the criteria for reviewing parking lots, it doesn't really apply because cars are gonna be kind of coming and going and moving and stuff. And then recently the council did approve no parking on Shiloh Avenue due to that road being pushed all the way through from the back of the mall all the way down to JP Road, which is pretty exciting. Something we've been looking forward to for like 30 or 40 years. And currently some employees do park on the side of Shiloh Avenue next to the Don K folks' property. So once that becomes signed for no parking, which I think is coming up pretty soon, that's going to result in needing a place for those staff people to park. And so we're hoping as part of this vehicle storage area that's going to accommodate some of the employee parking as well. And so we're asking as a recommended condition of approval to provide us a plan for their employee parking. Under traffic circulation, obviously with the vehicle storage, there's going to be an increase in vehicles kind of moving on and off the property, but they are well suited to take advantage of the intersection light there at JP and Highway 93. They're not proposing any fencing with this project, but they do have to do landscape screening because it is adjacent to a residential zone, and that does require 10 feet of landscaping along street frontages and buffering into residential areas, which would be to the west. They aren't going to be using any utilities, but they do have to do a stormwater plan, and so they'll have an engineered stormwater plan that'll be reviewed and approved by the Public Works Department. Traffic impacts are anticipated to be minimal. Of course, vehicles will be kind of coming and going, but it's not going to be a lot of vehicles. They did kind of map out like how many cars could potentially be parked on this property, and they figured that it could be up to 165, which is well under the 200 trip threshold. Potentially employees could be parking there as well, or maybe they'll be parking on the other side, but it still is going to be under the 200 trip threshold, so no TIS was required. Again, there's no buildings, it's just a parking lot essentially with landscaping, and then this area is kind of a character that has some big parking lots with a lot of cars on it, so we find that it kind of meets the community character of that particular area. So we're recommending approval, subject to 7 conditions of approval. Just to note 3 items, we do want an engineered stormwater plan, which is already starting to work on. A landscaping plan should be submitted with those engineering plans showing the tree buffers and stuff like that. And then we do want to see an employee parking plan on how they're addressing their staff parking with the no parking happening on Shiloh. Can I answer any questions for you?
I just have a quick question. Where does this align with the future Baker Avenue extension?
You know, I don't think the final alignment on that JP Road side has been figured out quite yet. It's either going to have to be high on the hill or low on the hill.
Right.
And this is lower on the hill.
This is at the bottom of the hill,
This is at the
right?
bottom of the hill.
Yeah. I mean, we had a map at one point for this whole area that had the Baker extension built into it, and I just
Yeah, and
wonder
I
if
think
it,
some of those plans showed lower, but then I've recently seen drawings where it could potentially go higher.
does the city
It
have a,
hasn't been determined yet.
do we have, is it part of our transportation plan?
probably.
Seems like it should be, huh?
Yeah, but again, it'd be like a dash line saying, we want
This
a
is where we'd
connection.
like it to be.
Just knowing that we want connections on both sides of the highway, but that final alignment hasn't been determined
Because there's
yet.
no right-of-way anywhere.
There's no right-of-way, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Wendy? Yeah, go ahead, John.
The conditions, number one, is the same as we had last month with the
Yeah,
daycare
that's kind of a
center.
standard condition we do for all conditional use permits. Mhm.
So if they wanted to make any changes outside the 1.22 acres, they'd have to go through the process again, right?
If they're expanding it, correct. But if it's slightly changing, like maybe they want to move the driveway 5 feet to the east
No,
versus,
but if
that'd
they
be-
want to use 4 other acres for something,
Yeah,
they're
they
gonna have to
definitely would
come
need to
through.
come back,
Okay.
correct.
So I also have a disclosure to make. I own a house along JP Road, lot number 43. It shows on I think it was page 4. But I don't see any way that I'm affected financially by this proposal, yay or nay.
I don't, unless you stand to materially gain or lose from
Right.
the approval or denial, you
They're not
don't have.
proposing to cut the trees across from the house, so there isn't any concern, really.
Okay, all right. Okay. Any other questions for Wendy? Okay, we will open the public hearing and hear from the applicant. Thanks for being patient, gentlemen. Do you have anything to add to the proposal? Or just come explain, whatever you want to do.
My name is Joe Lushong. I'm with TD&H Engineering. Address is 450 Corporate Drive, Suite 101, Kalispell, Montana. I just want to say we agree with the staff report and its recommendation for approval. And if you guys have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Okay, any questions for Joe? Or the engineer you're the engineers on the project? You're going to pave this area, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, and is there going to be a stormwater plan
Yes.
required? Because it's kind of a
Yes.
big,
We're going to do detention and it's going to meet city center requirements and it's going to go through public works.
yeah, okay, great. Awesome. Any questions?
Just, I guess, one comment, lighthearted. When we went out to view it, the only thing we saw of any concern was one hen turkey with 2 chicks, so perhaps you could be gentle.
Keep an eye out.
Thank you.
Are you sure it's not a wildlife corridor? Okay. All right, thanks, Joe.
All right, thank you.
Kevin, do you have anything to add?
Kevin Kalschmidt, 21 JP Road. No, just if you have any questions for me, I'm here,
Okay.
but I know everything about it, but.
Any questions for Kevin? I tried to find a place to park in your lot yesterday, and I couldn't find anywhere to park, so I gave up. I went home. Not going to buy a car there today or yesterday. Just kidding.
Hopefully this will help.
I know you guys need parking, so.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. All right, we'll close the public hearing and throw it to the board for a motion.
I'll make a motion. Excuse me, I have to get my glasses on. I move to approve WCUP 24-08 in accordance with the Whitefish City Code, Title 11, Chapter 7, Subsection 8, based on the findings of fact presented by the report and subject to 7 conditions of approval, and recommend the City Council approve the conditional use permit.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Toby, seconded by Whitney. Any further discussion on this one? Okay, those in favor, raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and it passes unanimously. Thanks, gentlemen. Thanks for sticking it out tonight.
Excellent. Yep, thank you.
Okay, and that brings us to where, my computer's gonna try to restart on me here. Better hurry. Matters from the board, good and welfare. Anything from the board for city staff?
I don't know if this is timed properly or not in relation to the growth plan and how, are we under any constraints in terms of communicating with staff about any of the tweaks that we discussed in terms of open meeting or anything like that? Do we need to make a record of that or?
I always do this wrong. It is a legislative matter, so you can visit with us about anything, and the public, I mean, we want you guys to be the voice of the public, and we want the public to come to you and share your information and ideas, and, I mean, I think it's good in the forum, because then you can have a good discussion about stuff, but yeah, feel free to give Alan a call and talk to him about whatever.
Yeah. And in fact, Alan asked me today to make sure that everybody feels comfortable talking to him, and because he felt like there was a lack of some discussion. He'd like to have a more vibrant discussion because he feels like he's kind of doing all this work, and he's doing a great job, which is why we don't have many questions. But I think it's gonna become more as we get more pieces of the actual plan before us. But yeah, legislative matters are, we can talk about them with anybody, okay?
Definitely.
All right, but keep in mind that, and if you do have questions, please reach out to Alan. He's more than happy to have a discussion with you.
Thank you.
Any other matters from the board? Okay, the only other thing I would say is that this, the growth policy or the community plan, I think is what we're gonna try to call this thing, is gonna be ramping up, and it's gonna take more of our time over the next year for sure. And we can probably plan on 5 o'clock meetings for the remainder of this year, I would bet, and through, probably for the next 12 months would be my guess.
Including September.
Including September, I think. We'll know that soon enough. Alan said that there might be, he's gonna come up with a red line plan
Right.
and have us look at it
We don't
again, I
have
guess.
any current land use actions for September.
Oh, we don't?
No,
Okay.
so maybe we'd want to take September off and have it in October, although you said you were going to be gone potentially in October.
October, I'm usually gone for that weekend. Well, I don't think it hurts us to have even just a work session on the community
Oh, yeah.
plan, because
You could take your time and really.
last time we did it, we had multiple public hearings about different parts of the plan, so.
Yeah.
But if it's only just one small thing, like the vision statement, then maybe we can push it off to September.
Okay. We'll talk about it at our staff meeting.
Okay. And with that, our next meeting is September, what?
19th potentially.
September 19th, potentially. Anybody know that you won't be here for that?
I'll be here.
Okay.
I'll be here.
I'll be here as well. Okay, and that's it. Just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Okay, so moved, and we are adjourned. Thank you.